Okay, so the sump is now reinstalled. You can see little remnants of the black RTV silicon just seeping out from the edge where it's all been torqued up. So just move that out of the way. If you're pretty careful about it, you can slide it in there without upsetting the liquid gasket and get it reinstalled. So yeah, all happy days. This here was the oil level sensor I was talking about. That's back installed again and connected up. This is what you have to remove if you're taking the sump out in order to have it clear the oil pump assembly, because otherwise the stick is sticking up behind the oil pump, which is just up here. That's it really, off we go onto the gearbox. Okay, so the gearbox is finally bolted in place. There's just a lot of, when you're doing it by yourself, it's just a lot of fine tweaking to get the bell housing to mate up perfectly with the engine. Little tip as well, I didn't film it, but the engine, of course, sits on two engine mounts like this. And when you've disconnected the gearbox, the weight of it tilts slightly forward, which means that the face is, you know, at not an ideal angle. So what I did was I put a jack just pushing up on the crankshaft pulley on the front of the engine, just to tilt the engine back a little bit, which makes it a little easier for us to mate the gearbox up to it, and just to make the angle of attack just right. And that's just what I did. You can actually push it with your hand a little bit as well, because it's just pivoting on those two engine mounts like that. Anyway, so that's what we did. All the bolts are in and just need tightening up, and this is what we will be using our gigantically long extension for back here. And we'll just do up all the bell housing bolts. Most of them are these big whatever it is, E14s, and then there's a couple of the 2 or 3 of the smaller ones, E10 or whatever, down the bottom of the bell housing. And then we can reassemble everything else, get the suspension support cross member in, and connect all the electrical connectors, and then put the prop shaft back on, blah 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 blah. Okay, gearbox is mated back to the engine now. One thing that's pretty crucial is to make sure that the torque converter is bolted to the flywheel, else there'll be no transmission of power. So as you can imagine, as these have been pushed together, the holes don't line up. The torque converter and the flywheel are just a little bit out of sync. If you turn the flywheel, it tends to sort of drag on the torque converter. So if you just get your finger through this hole here, we can just thumb the torque converter around. Can you see that? It's just beginning to line up with the hole there, and get our first bolt in. So here's one of our torque converter bolts. Let's put him in. There we go. Now we can use our special tool, remember, to turn the crank from the pulley at the front. I'm just going to do them finger tight, and then we can go in and torque them up properly. They should turn in sync now that we've got one bolt in. There we go. It's a 17mm socket. Let's just give him a little bit of a tighten up. Okay, so starter motor needs to go back in. And there are 3 bolts. One here. And another one next to it, and then one that goes into this rubber mount over here. A very deep one. So it needs some power as well, and here's where it's going to get most of its power. It's going to go onto this bolt here. It's got a flat edge here. We want to angle it away so the flat edge mates up there nicely, because if it twists this way, which is the way it kind of wants to go, it's going to start shorting out on that terminal there. Just be careful when you're reassembling, that's all. There we go. There we go. Lovely jubbly. Right. Okay, it's Propshaft time. Okay, can you see the gearbox is ready to accept the Propshaft? Now, I'm still supporting it with a scissor jack, just pressing up against the filter pan, because the cross member, you perhaps can't see it just over there, that supports the transmission here, it gets in the way of doing the bolts up for the Propshaft. So my order of doing things is to put the Propshaft on, bolt it up, swizzle it round, put the last bolt on, put the cross member on, then I can put the rest of the pieces, the centre support bearing and the final end into the rear diff. And that's the Propshaft done, and then it's the exhaust. I think the car can come off the ramps then. Now it's time to get the exhaust fitted.